Hello, sports fans, and welcome to the Scott Sports 101 Sunday Night Football postgame show and Monday Night Football update show. We'll get to the Monday night momentarily, but first we're going to recap the Sunday night game for you. Uh, Last night's Sunday night game. I know a lot of you were rooting for Jacksonville, but the uh, the but Lamar Jackson threw uh, a touchdown pass and made the play of the night when he avoided a sack and threw to Isaiah Likely near the goal line, and the Baltimore Ravens clinched a postseason berth with a 23-7 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday night. Uh, Gus Edwards ran for a touchdown for the Ravens, who go to 11-3 on the season and won their fourth in a row and moved a step closer to securing a number one seed and home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. The Jaguars fell to 8-6. They lost their third straight, all against AFC North teams, and fell into a tie with Houston and Indianapolis for the atop the at the top of the AFC South. Uh, Self-inflicted mistakes were a common thread in Jacksonville's skid. Uh, Trevor Lawrence fumbled twice in the latest letdown, including one in the fourth quarter, and that essentially sealed Baltimore's eighth victory in its last 9 games. This one may have been costly for the Ravens. Promising rookie running back, rookie running back, Keaton Mitchell injured his left knee early in the fourth quarter and was quickly ruled out. Replays showed his knee bent awkwardly during a run. He flashed a thumbs up sign as he left the sideline on a cart. The Ravens also lost starting left tackle Ronnie Staley to a concussion injury and free safety Marcus Williams to a groin injury. A promising and the Ravens. Justin Edwards likely and an elite defense did enough to overcome to the injuries. Jackson threw for 171 yards, 70 of those likely, and ran for 97 more. Edwards added 58 on the ground, and Mitchell had 73 before his injury. And Lawrence ran for 264 yards, and including a 65-yard touchdown to Jamal Agnew that gave the Jaguars life after a scoreless first half. But the Ravens answered with an unlikely play. Jackson avoided Dwayne Smoot's sack, rolled right, and threw a pass up for grabs near the goal line, likely over-maneuvered cornerback Darius Williams and safety Andrew Weingard for the receptions. Edwards scored 2 plays later. The Jaguars had 4 scoring chances in the first half, but failed to cash in on any of them. They managed 181 yards, which was the most by a team in an opening half this season that did not score. The Jaguars had Brandon McManus missed 2 field goals from beyond 50 yards, and Lawrence inexplicably fumbled at the Baltimore 18-yard line. Lawrence simply lost the ball while scrambling on a 3rd and 17 play. He wasn't going to pick up the first down, but Jacksonville surely was in makeable range for McManus. Lawrence's second mistake was even more of a head scratcher after connecting with Zay Jones for 36 yards and putting the Jaguars at the 5 with 15 seconds remaining in the half. Lawrence probably should have spiked the ball and stopped the clock. Instead, he threw short out to rookie Parker Washington, who couldn't get out of bounds and helplessly watched the clock run out. Uh, Add it all up, and the Jaguars could have been up 16-10 at intermission. Instead, they trailed 10 to nothing. McManus' first two of two errant field goals was a 50-yarder that clanged off the right upright in the first quarter. He probably should have gotten a do-over. Officials failed to throw a flag on Mitchell after he ran into McManus while he was finishing a follow-through. Holder Logan Cook uh, vehemently argued with officials who later came to the sideline to explain themselves to Cook and coach Doug Pederson. Retired NFL referee and current NBC rules analyst Terry McCauley said the Ravens should have been penalized 5 yards on the 4th and 7th play, and they should have been, but they, of course, we know that they were not. Ravens defensive tackle Justin Madubike tied an NFL record by recording at least a half sack in 11 consecutive games. Mandu Bioik sacked Lawrence in the 4th to tie the record held by Jared Allen and Chris Jones and Trey Hendrickson and Sean Ellis. Now, there were some injuries. Jaguars were without wide receiver Zay Jones, who recently returned from a knee injury, strained his hamstring in the 4th. Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton played through a knee injury that had him listed as questionable. He finished with 7 tackles. And up next, Baltimore plays at San Francisco on Christmas Eve. Another primetime matchup between division leaders on the opposite coast. Jacksonville plays at Tampa Bay on Christmas Eve. Also a game featuring division leaders. So these should be a couple of really great matchups. But Jacksonville struggled offensively and defensively in this game, and I got to give credit to where credit is due, and that is to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I got to give it to them. So, I mean, that's the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Jaguars struggled offensively and defensively, as I mentioned, but I got to give credit to the Baltimore Ravens, and they get the game balls. Lamar Jackson was 14 of 24 carries and attempts for 171 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And that's on the rushing side of it. The passing, actually, that was the passing side. Now here's the rushing. 12 attempts, 97 yards. And Isaiah Likely, 5 receptions, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. So it's just one of those games where the home team just dominated, and that's what the Ravens did. And my brother-in-law and I both took the Ravens and won on that one. I am 14-2. My brother-in-law is 10-5. Yeah, he is. No, he is 11-4. Excuse me, he's 11-4. And right now we're gonna get to the Monday night game in just a moment. But right now, it is time for the Scott Sports 101 Monday Night Football trivia question. Week 15 trivia question, I should say. What was the first Super Bowl appearance for the Eagles? I will have the answer later in the podcast. It's week 15 of Monday Night Football. Are you ready for some football? We have a great NFC matchup for you tonight. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks are battling it out right now at Lumen Field in Seattle. Philly's on the road, and right now it's 7-0 Eagles in the second quarter, 12:22 to go. Before halftime, it's a 2nd and 6 at the Seattle 45. Eagles have the ball. And it was DeAndre Swift up the middle to the Seattle 45 for, actually, no, Jalen Hurts passed short, left to A.J. Brown to the Seattle 35 for 10 yards. And that's where we stand right now. Uh, and the Eagles are coming off a 33 to off a 33-13 loss, and it was a romping blowout loss at the hands of the Dallas Cowboys last week. Excuse me. The Cowboys were held to just one touchdown and 2 field goals in the loss to the Cowboys. They struggled in Big D last week. The Seattle Seahawks are coming off a 28-16 loss at the hands of the San Francisco 49ers last week. The Seahawks really struggled defensively as they were held to just 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Drew Lock is starting at quarterback for the Seahawks tonight in place of the injured Geno Smith. So, we will see what happens with that. And I know, Nick Sirianni isn't yet feeling growing anxiety of concern about what's happened the past 2 weeks with Philadelphia. Pete Carroll seems to be feeling every bit of the worry about what's happened with Seattle. The two slumping teams will meet on Monday night, each trying to snap losing streaks, and where a win could dramatically after how the final 3 weeks of the could dramatically alter how the final 3 weeks of the regular season are viewed. Excuse me. We are not hitting any panic button as far as we've got to do everything. We didn't play well, Sirianni said, with the Eagles having lost 2 straight. We didn't play good enough, and we didn't coach good enough the last 2 weeks to win games. It wasn't up to our standard. So we were pissed, and we were looking for ways to fix that. The Eagles are 10-3 and no longer alone atop of the NFC East after last week's loss to Dallas. They no longer have the inside track at the number 1 seed in the NFC after losing to San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and thus the 49ers holding a tiebreaker since Sirianni took charge in Philadelphia before the 2021 season. And before the 2021 season, excuse me. The Eagles are only 3-game losing streak came in its first month as a head coach. But the Eagles can wrap up a postseason spot with a victory. Seattle would love for its playoff hopes to be that simple. The current free fall facing the Seahawks, who are now 6-7 in the season, is even more significant. They've lost 4 straight for the first time in Carroll's tenure. They've got from being firmly entrenched in the NFC playoff conversation to now on the outside of a muddled pack trying to find their way back into contention. A win over the Eagles would dramatically change Seattle's fortunes, and those fortunes and playoff odds, especially with a final 3 games that appear far more manageable than the past few weeks have been. There is so much at stake from this point forward. There's so much with the 5 other teams. They are trying for the spot, Carroll said. It's a run to the finish and see who wins the race, excuse me. It's exciting, and we've got to make the most of it and be tuned into it. The Eagles and Seahawks had the honor of becoming the first game the league has flexed from a Sunday to a Monday as part of the league's agreements with its broadcast partners. Games being moved around on Sundays has become a commonplace on the calendar, but this was the first time a game was moved from Sunday to Monday. Originally, the Chiefs were scheduled to face the Patriots as the last game of Week 15, and despite asking the Eagles to travel cross country for a Monday night game, they won't face a short week. Philadelphia was already scheduled to be one of the three games played on the Christmas season. Uh, Seattle wide receiver DK Metcalf was in the spotlight again last week for reacting to a hit, from behind by San Francisco's Fred Warner during an interception return that led to a minor scuffle between both teams. Metcalf was one of the two players ejected for the small melee. He'd like the conversation to turn back to his production on the field uh, uh, and replicate and yeah, replicate, what he's done in the past games against the Eagles. Two of the biggest games of his career have come the past two times Seattle and Philadelphia have played. In the 2019 playoff meeting, Metcalf had 7 catches for 160 yards and a touchdown. When the teams met the following season, he had an even bigger game with 10 receptions for 177 yards, which is still his career high in yards receiving. Seattle is hopeful that not playing last week, an extra day of rest with the Monday game allows starting quarterback Geno Smith to return from a groin injury. Smith was a spectator while Drew Lock made his first start with Seattle and his first start since the final week of the 2021 season. Unfortunately, Geno Smith is not playing tonight, and Drew Lock, as I mentioned, is starting in place of the injured Geno Smith tonight for Seattle. Uh, uh, there was good and bad that came with Lock's performance. He threw for 269 yards and a pair of touchdowns, but one of his two interceptions was a poor decision and a poorly thrown ball. Lock was able to extend plays with his feet, but also missed a couple of opportunities to run for potential big gains. Seattle would like its starter back, but feels confident if Lock needs to go again. So that's the big question right there. Is will they? Big quarterback question is will they get Geno Smith back? Now we got a little bit of rookie watch. The matchup could feature two of the leading contenders for defensive rookie of the year, and two players who were highly rumored to be of interest to the other team going into the draft. Seattle defensive back Devin Witherspoon and Philadelphia defensive lineman Jalen Carter are the two leaders of the AP Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation. Carter was rumored to be a target of the Seahawks to help with their defensive line, while the Eagles were thought to be interested in Witherspoon to bolster their secondary. Both teams seem pretty happy with how things played out. Witherspoon had 16 passes, defense, 3 sacks, and 1 interception. Uh, uh, both teams seem pretty happy with how things played out. Witherspoon has a defense, 3 sacks, and 1 interception. Carter has 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and last week he rendered a fumble for a touchdown. Whether both are on the field Monday is still unknown after Witherspoon left last week's game in the first half with a hip pointer. So hopefully they'll play tonight, or people starting in their places and they're watching. So this is one of those games I think is where it's going to come down to where uh, it could come down to a game-winning touchdown or a field goal. Philly leads 10-0, second quarter, 6:20 to go. First and 10 to Seattle. Uh, 25, and the uh, the Seahawks have the ball. Right now, it's time to reveal the answer to today's Scott Sports 101 Monday Night Football Week 15 trivia question. It's a Broncos trivia question. I mean, it's a Eagles trivia question. Excuse me. Yeah, it's an Eagles trivia question. What was the first Super Bowl appearance for the Eagles? And if you said Super Bowl 15, you are correct. Uh, Super Bowl 15, uh, the first appearance was at Super Bowl 15 in 1980. At the end, capping off a successful season in 1980. The Eagles played the Oakland Raiders in Louisiana, and of course, the Eagles did not win, they lost. I'll have another trivia question on my next podcast, which will be for Thursday Night Football, and so stay tuned for that. So stay tuned for that. So right now, I really think this is going to be one of those games where it's going to come down to a game-winning touchdown or a last-second game-winning field goal. So, and right now, it's Walker right guard to the Philly 46 for 6 yards. Uh, uh, and yeah, you can see how that's the ball. And so right now, yeah, that's where we stand. And right now, it's a third and one at the Philly 46. Second quarter, 5:51 to go, 10-0 Philadelphia. And so we'll see if Philadelphia can get the win or does Seattle get the win and keep their playoff hopes alive. That's just about going to wrap it up for the Scott Sports 101 Monday night football, Sunday night football postgame show, and Monday night football update show. I'll be back with the Monday night football postgame show once the game between the Eagles and Seahawks has concluded. But until then, always remember, be a team player each and every day in every way possible. So long, everybody. 3, 2, 1. I'm done.